Okay, so the dissertation topic that I have come up with is, and I still have to compile a lot of evidence and research studies to prove the gap, but I mean, part of me is like, do I really? I mean, it's kind of like, duh, but I do because I have to prove there's reason for my research. So my question is still evolving, but it is something like, why are indigenous Americans who speak Spanish considered Mexicans, while indigenous Americans who speak English are considered Native Americans? When did Mexican become a race, and how has this affected the development of culture among indigenous people in America? And I want to lean more towards child development, how this has affected child development and cultural development, because I reflect as a child myself, and when I was going to school and I was being taught what was what, I remember being taught about the Spanish conquistadors and the Indians. I don't ever remember being taught about the Mexicans, okay? So I thought these people are other cultures. They're other people. They're not me, right? I learned about all these cultures that had nothing to do with me. And then I got older, became more educated, and then realized, even before I did the DNA test, that I was not Mexican, because when I was in California, a couple of Mexican guys from Mexico told me I wasn't Mexican because I wasn't born in Mexico. And it kind of shocked me, but they were right. I was like, shit, you're right. I was born in Washington. They said, well, then you're not Mexican. And it really confused me for a while. So I couldn't tell them that I was Mexican because they would get offended. So I'm like, well, what the fuck am I? So I started saying, well, I guess I'm Spanish and Indian. But I didn't know what kind of Indian. And after talking to my grandfather before he passed, and other people came to the conclusion that we're Aztec Indian, and we might have some Comanche or Apache or something like that. And then when I did my DNA test, that further concluded that I am Aztec, indigenous, American from Mexico. So upper northern Mexico, southern Texas area, all that area. And if you look way back, all that in most of America was considered Aztlan, Aztec territory with numerous tribes. And so growing up, I did not know that in actuality, I was learning about my people. I was learning about both sides. I'm like 26 or 28% Spanish and like 48% Mexican indigenous, and the rest is just like some European, which Spanish is European, and African, just kind of all mixed everywhere. But the most blood I have is the indigenous side. So when I went to college, I learned American history. I still have that book because I was so like shocked by what I was reading about how America came about. But most people just kind of start the story like when Columbus came over, and then they kind of like skip ahead to like the Boston Tea Party and slavery and riots and gold rush, and like they talk about like the key, I guess, points that matter to, I guess, most people. But they don't go into depth and detail about other things. So that led me to research more things. Around this time, I had started working for the Tulalip tribes, and I really admired how much into their culture they were, and I started questioning my own culture, wondering, what do I believe? What did I grow up with? Well, I grew up with a grandmother who spoke Spanish. And she did witchcraft, I guess, what you want to call it. She was also a Catholic. She went to church. Okay, so she prayed to all the Catholic gods, the Virgin Mary, all the angels. But she also did spells with candles and eggs and prayers. And I think she kind of had a little bit of an altar with the Virgin Mary and a couple candles. I just remember her casting like spells on my dad because he was a drug addict. She was like trying to get him to stay home or have a stomach or ache or get sick every time he used drugs or something. Who knows what else she did. She did some healing spells, and she saw a curandero, witch doctor, in town, who would give her all her herbs and shit like that. I grew up believing that shit was paganism, okay? That shit was not good. That shit was the devil. And the more I educate myself, the more I realize that no, that's what the Europeans wanted us to believe, that our culture was wrong. So we've been like brainwashed into believing that everything that we grew up with, like originally, is just wrong. That we were witches, we did witchcraft, we followed pagan gods like the sun god, the god of rain, the god of like all these other gods that they didn't believe in. And I just got into an argument with my mom this week about it, because she's like such a Jesus freak, and I'm trying to tell her, Mom, that isn't, it isn't right for you to say that Santeria and all that shit is wrong. Because she's like, oh, it'd be like your aunt and your family from Texas, and they do the oils and the eggs and the roosters and all those spells and shit. And I'm like, Mom, that's your roots. That's your culture. That's not my culture. Jesus is my culture. Jesus is my God. And I'm like, damn, yeah, they brainwashed us into believing that was our God. It's not, Mom. I mean, yeah, you believe in it now. Good for you. But it's like, dig into who you really are. So, needless to say, I grew up with not really knowing where I fit in culturally. Just thinking I'm Mexican. But Mexico is a fucking country, okay? I am not a country. I don't identify as a fucking country. Mexico is like the United States whereas there's so many states in there and different dialects and different languages and different styles, different races. I mean, there's tons of different indigenous tribes out there that speak different languages. Not everyone in Mexico speaks fucking Spanish. Spanish is not our indigenous language. Spanish is from Spain, okay? Spain is in Europe. So, because I feel so passionately about it, I'm gonna ride this train, ride this indigenous horse. I feel like we all need to be educated in America, okay? In America. We come from so many different cultures, so many different heritages and backgrounds, and we're all lost. We don't know who we are anymore. It's okay to be a melting pot of cultures. That's great. But in the end, I feel like we should keep our roots only because that's a part of our DNA. That's a part of who we are. There's so many studies to do with health and food and weight loss and shit like that, saying that, you know, find out what your people ate. That's what you're supposed to eat. But now we fucking eat everything from everywhere. I know we're evolving, and we're evolving into a mixed culture, and the new generation of children are evolving into accepting everyone, which is awesome. And I also feel like the acceptance of everyone should integrate the exception of cultural identity, of cultural differences, not just gender differences or sexual differences or preferences, but reintegrate all of our cultural ways. I was thinking, what if, because I watch a lot of cartoons, what if by tapping into our roots, into who we are, we find that we do have access to magic. We have magic powers in doing our spells and our rituals and things that we did before we were colonized. And this is, you know, with other religions too, like Vikings, Europeans had tribes too, you know, like they're everywhere. And a lot of other religions or cultures have spell casting and white magic and black magic and all that shit. And it's not bad. It's just who we were, how we got by. Maybe we are magic, and maybe that magic was taken away and we forgot. And I was trying to tell my mom, maybe your God is the devil. Maybe the Christian God really is the fucking devil, and the devil just brainwashed all of us into believing that we don't have magic. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Not the magic part. That's my own conspiracy theory. We're all magical. We just forgot. But I'm going to dig deeper into us indigenous Spanish-speaking people that are not recognized and don't get access to free education, free healthcare. We don't get shit. We don't get shit. We have like the most native indigenous blood, and we are not recognized. We are still discriminated against. And we always have been. We really always have been. It just continues. And I worry about the cultural development of all those poor children left at the border because of immigration laws. Our people have been migrating for centuries. And then we are so nice. We let people come live in our land and try to live peacefully with them. And they fucking brainwash us. Okay, I'm getting off my soapbox.